Let's start with the prompt here. Which choice describes data from the table that supports the underlying claim? And let's start reading. This economist has shown that divided U.S. Congresses, which occurs when one party holds the majority in the House and another holds the majority in the Senate, tend to accompany reductions in total federal spending relative to GDP, which he interprets to reflect decreases in government size. He calculated the percent point change in outlays, which is spending, for consecutive U.S. Congresses. He pointed to his calculations as evidence that a divided Congress may be a necessary but not sufficient condition for decrease in government size to occur. So that's a curious little phrase there, necessary but not sufficient. And when you look at the chart, it kind of makes that make sense. So when you have the divided Congress, those are the times where you have a negative total change in outlay. And the passage says outlay is government spending. So the times where you have a drop in government spending only have occurred in moments where there's a divided Congress. But there are also some moments where, yeah, you have the divided Congress, but you still didn't get the drop in spending. So that's basically what's being said. And we're not really looking at these two columns because one is non-defense, the other is defense, but this column here is total. So let's look at the answers. The periods, A says, the periods of undivided Congresses were associated with increase in non-defense outlays, where all the periods of divided Congress, except one, were associated with reductions in defense outlays. So this is breaking it down to non-defense and defense, but the correlation we were looking for was in the total. Looking at B, all the periods of divided Congresses were associated with reductions in total outlays. So right there, we're wrong because we have 1, 2, 3 periods of divided Congress, but only 2 of them had the reduction in total outlays. So not all. All is the wrong word. Some of the periods is a more accurate word. C, the periods of undivided Congresses were associated with increase in total outlays, whereas all the periods of divided Congresses were associated with reductions in either non-defense or defense. So once again, C is a little off because it's getting into the non-defense and defense, but we're looking for the total. So now looking at D, all the periods of divided Congress except one were associated with reductions. So yeah, this one and this one except this one. Whereas the periods of undivided Congresses, which are these, were associated with reductions, were associated with increases in total outlays. And that's what we have here. So once again, all the periods of divided Congress except one were associated with reductions, but the periods of undivided Congresses were all associated with increases, which totally matches the graph. And so therefore our answer here is D.